Good afternoon, everyone. I would firstly just like to thank Stian for his 13 warning letters that he issued the Recreation and Parks Department yesterday. So thank you so much. I appreciate our relationship. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm just quickly going to give you a brief overview of the Invasive Species Unit. So basically our goal is to improve the management of invasive species, to reduce the environmental, social and economical impacts within the city of Cape Town. We've got 7 guiding principles, where we're starting with our early detection rapid response program, and that has been headed up by Pamutsu Ramabulana, and our shuttle border program project also falls within our EDRR project. We also have various control programs, your normal plant programs, and also our evaluation, monitoring and reporting programs that we are responsible for, not just to DFFE, but also to SANBI as well. We also take part and provide information support to various institutions like UCT, Center for Invasion Biology, and work with various experts within the invasive management field. And as you are aware, we work very closely with Stian and Lebo, and we have established and enforced and effective regulatory tools. Like I just said, we've just received the 13 letters. We are awaiting the others. We are very keen on working with everyone, anyone, our internal stakeholders, various line departments, and also external stakeholders as well. And one of the key things that we are working towards and have not achieved yet, unfortunately, is to obtain adequate, sustainable funding in order for us to implement our various projects. And we also promote change through awareness communication and also social development programs. Okay, so who are we? We are 18, we used to be 12 for a very long time, but we are now 18 permanent staff members within our unit, situated at Westlake, at the bottom of Oudtshoornweg. And we also have 30 EPWP skills development participants with us, and also 6 temporary workers with us in the unit. Okay, that is our management team. We have 2 heads and a couple of project managers. Mfundo Tafeni, Head Invasive Species, and Mashudu Palandwa, who's implementing our green jobs projects across the city. And I'm sure you have spoken to the project management team that is here today. Okay, so how do we do what we do? In 2014, my predecessor, Louise Stafford, embarked on developing a prioritization model for the management of invasive species within the city of Cape Town. The goal of this prioritization model was to maximize the effectiveness of our resources to control invasive species, and obviously with that to achieve optimal protection for biodiversity and for the provision of various ecosystem services. During this time we went around internally speaking to various line departments within the city of Cape Town, external workshops as well, and here we are at the CIB Center for Invasion Biology with various experts around the table. Okay. Through these workshops, we had to look at various factors that we need to consider that we want to include into our prioritization model. And these include obviously the risks of invasive species, fire. I know a lot of you are here specifically today to find out more about the risk of fires and the link between fires and invasive species. And also back then in 2014, we actually already identified the possibility of land invasion as well. During this prioritization, we also look at the historical information with regards to control of a particular area, taking into consideration fire, the history of various previous control programs, and obviously if we look at prioritizing specifically our protected areas across the city, we had to look at what is the status of that particular area, what are the various risks, what is the condition of our indigenous veld, and obviously also what are the types of invasive species within that area, and yeah, the list just goes on and on and on. So we finally came up with 3 major categories that we are taking into consideration, and also subcategories. And what we've done is we've actually allocated weightings for those categories that will be considered when we prioritize. So how do we do this? So we look at a particular area, or what we've done specifically for our protected areas across the city is looking at various tactics that we need to deploy for those protected areas to control invasive species in those areas. And some of the high priority things that we have taken into consideration is working tactics that we are wanting or are deploying is the working from the top down within our catchments, prioritizing follow-ups rather than doing initial work to ensure that we actually follow through and protecting that investment with an initial expenditure that we've made in that area. Obviously, we need to comply with the NEMBA legislation, and we also prioritize less denser areas compared to the heavier infested areas, because the low-hanging fruit will make it easier or cheaper for us in the long run. So basically, how our prioritization model works is where our 3 major categories overlap. Those areas are the highest priority within the City of Cape Town, or came up as the highest priority within the City of Cape Town for us to actually deploy our invasive species control teams. Okay, so there's actually a huge amount of thinking and work went behind of how we actually deploying our teams and what we are doing. So after we've prioritized our protected areas within the City of Cape Town, we also looked at various objectives, and we had to align with a municipality plan, which is a 5-year plan with detailed targets. Those targets are included in our local biodiversity action plan, and that's all. All these plans are free to the public. It's on the city website for you to go and review. Also including it into the municipal integrated departmental plan. And then we form part of the environmental management department, and obviously those targets goes into the business plan to ensure that whatever targets we've put forward are monitored, reviewed on a yearly basis as well. And then from there, we then develop the various control plans for our protected areas. Okay, and then our team, project management team, would then break it down further from that 5 years into annual plans of operations. Okay. I was a bit afraid of putting budgets forward, so I'm just going to pause a bit. And I wanted to actually review the past 3 years and share this information with you, because I know these things, stats are hidden in documents that is 500 pages long, all the different plans and feedbacks that the city do. So basically, over the past 3 years, you'll see there's a huge fluctuation in the budget that we have received. The majority of the funding that we receive in our unit is from our City of Cape Town EPWP department, and obviously with that comes certain conditions. So it's not like we get the funding and you can go and control invasive species. There's various job creation targets and various other targets that we need to meet as well. So the budget that I am projecting at the moment is an all-inclusive budget. That is also line department funding from Altus and Susan and various other line departments as well. That funding includes the wages for our temporary staff, Also, all our expenditure, operational expenditure, on a yearly basis as well. So you can just imagine deducting all of those expenditure from this budget and then still needing to do what we are doing on a daily basis. Okay? We have our job creation target is normally 3,000 for the year, or around 3,000, and we've always managed to overachieve on our job creation target. Our job creation target was reduced to 2,000 in 2019 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in the 2019-2020 year was the only year that we did not achieve our invasive species target set out for that year, and that is mainly because we weren't deemed as emergency workers and our teams were at home for the majority of the financial year. Okay. There's the various FT full-time equivalents that we've employed as well, and also the amount of hectares that we've cleared in those particular years. You will also see that for the previous financial year, there's just over 54 million rand that we received. That might seem a lot, but we were lucky enough to receive some funding, capital funding, to replace some of our laptops, our IT equipment, and our councillor, Simon Lalcock, was also very generous and gave us some funding for a new truck to remove biomass as well. So thanks a lot to him as well. Okay, just quickly going to touch on some of the other projects that the project team is not going to talk about. So we have a mass rearing biocontrol facility at Westlake. Sisanda Nuse is heading up our biocontrol program, and we focus mainly on aquatic weed management or rearing aquatic weed biocontrol, and we're using host-specific insects to control the invasive species. And this has actually become, specifically in the south area, in the Sand River catchment, where we go through when it's endangered western leopard toad breeding season. We're not allowed to go into the rivers, disturb the breeding cycle, and then this is where we actually deploy our biocontrol agents, and then they take care of the aquatic weeds within the Sand River catchment for us. Okay? Our biocontrol program also allows for physically impaired individuals to take part in our EPW, in our CADA ASMAL Integrated Catchment Management Program. Okay? Also just a map of the various areas where we have released biocontrol. We've also released or send biocontrol outside of the city boundaries, so you're more than welcome to contact Sisanda Nuse or our invasive species email address to request biological control agents without any cost to you. We only require a GPS coordinate and photos for monitoring purposes. Okay. We've mentioned the relationship between us and Stian and Lebo. So we've come, I think, quite a far way with our invasive species compliance, and like you have all learned today, that there's no favoritism. So there's Heine Riffel from our office is heading up our invasive species compliance work that we do. So in the top photo, that's Andrea van Gunten and Heiner with our DFFE colleagues looking at a non-compliant landowner, and at the bottom, Timothy is doing some monitoring on our protected areas for the control plans that we have sent Stian. Okay. That's an example of the control plan that Stian has approved, so thank you so much for that, Stian. And our aim with our invasive species compliance program that we are running is, first of all, to ensure that our protected areas do have invasive species control plans and are obviously compliant with the NEMBA legislation. We are also, perhaps I should just pause here to explain that I mentioned that we are within the Environmental Management Department, and our core function is to manage and control invasive species on protected areas, but we also advise other line departments on the control of invasive species. So we do not have the mandate to say to a recreation and parks or city health or whichever landowner within line department that owns land within the city of Cape Town to say you must control invasive species. That's Tian's role, but we can advise, and we do offer that across the city of Cape Town. We also run various projects on behalf of line departments as well. Okay. And like I said, with our collaboration with the various units in DFFE, we are working with non-compliant land or compiling a list of non-compliant landowners, not just private landowners, our own line departments and everyone else that's obviously non-compliant within the city of Cape Town. And one of the key things that we're working towards is also collaborating with our adjacent neighbours in municipalities, Stellenbosch municipality, looking specifically at our species management, identifying those key species and specifically under our EDRR program, where we still have a chance of actually containing, controlling, and possibly extirpating those species. To look at pathway management, because there's no point in us controlling a specific species, but there's the constant influx from our neighbours coming into the city as well. Okay, we also do a lot of awareness and communication and social development. This was obviously before the COVID pandemic, where we take school groups, interested parties. Karen, I see you here. You've been so many times to our biocontrol facility. Friends group, anyone that wants to come around and actually look at our biocontrol facility, and also the rehabilitation facility that our biodiversity branch run at Westlake, where we're looking at propagating and obviously where we come in and removing invasive species, going back and planting indigenous species as well. One of the key things that we also embarked on in 2019 is adding on to our Kada Asmal Integrated Catchment Management Program a skills development program. This was one of the first sorts in the city of Cape Town and was quite successful. We started off, or the aim for the 3 years was to employ 30 participants within this program that consists of young individuals within the environmental sector that actually need experience and exposure to find more suitable and long-term employment within the environmental sector. And we actually ended up employing 58. Mfundo Tafeni headed up the skills development program. We ended up employing 58 participants within the first 3 year cycle as a result of the success of the skills development program. Our second phase of that program is where we're now employing 75 participants. It's actually now 85, you guys have increased it, participants, not just with us, but also across the various nature reserves as well, to help specifically with awareness and education as well. Okay, so just to mention a few of our major challenges, I'm sure the project managers will also delve in that. The lack of sustainable funding. You guys saw the funding that we have. The 1 year, it's just over 50 million, the next it's 20, and this makes it very difficult to implement invasive species projects, because one of the crucial rules that we have within the unit is that you do not clear an initial site if you do not have the funding to at least do 4 follow-up operations within that particular area, particular management block. Okay. We sometimes do get funding, and a lot of the funding that you've seen in the project is where we have the adjustment budget in January, and then there's a line department that perhaps do not spend their funding, and that funding gets allocated to us. We always put up our hand, yes, we want the funding, but a lot of the times then we put a lot of pressure on our contractors to then implement invasive species programs within a short period. Of 3 months just before our financial year end. Okay, so the capacity sometimes with the contractors is also a bit of an issue for us. We mentioned about the very successful skills development program. It also have a negative part to that. just as soon as we have a new participant joining us, we go through our training program. Person knows how to identify shuttle border and various other EDRR plants, and then a year from that, then the person moves on, and then we need to start all over again, and that obviously have a huge impact on our various projects that we are implementing and puts us back with regards to implementation as well. I put in red tape. I'm not sure if I need to explain that any further. Then all of our projects that we are implementing is EPWP programs where there's job creation that is linked to that, and that is a huge administrative burden. We have 3 clerks and 1 office admin in our unit. To employ 1 person without that person putting a foot down on the ground and pulling out a plant, 17 pages needs to be filled in before that person actually gets to the ground, get to the place where they need to be. That's excluding timesheets, health and safety talks, and all the other things that needs to happen. So you can just imagine the amount of paperwork that we need to go through. Okay? There's also a lot of changes that's happening within the city. A lot of times we get new instructions from the top, and specifically linked to our supply chain management processes. And then from an implementation point of view, it really makes it near impossible for us to implement projects. So we might sit with this 5 million rand, but the means of actually getting projects off the ground becomes sort of impossible. I normally say, myself and my team, we're young, we're very motivated, we're very dedicated, but we're all actually 21. We just look a lot older because of all the red tape and all the administrative loads. Okay. And then as a last point, is Marco will deal with this, but we are really scarred emotionally, and we do suffer a lot of verbal abuse when we control mallard ducks. Okay, but Marco will delve into that. I just wanted to touch on some of the major challenges that we are facing. So some of the good things that has happened. In 2019, we received an award for first runner-up for the best project, the Kada Asmal Integrated Catchment Management Program. Unfortunately, the Housing Department stole the main award, but yeah, we won't get upset. We're happy for them. In 2019, we also received first runner-up in the and we were recognized for our exceptional contribution within the City of Cape Town, and that is specifically for the shuttle border and our reaction to the shuttle border infestation in the Somerset West area. I would want to commend and again thank Dr. Luke Potgieter. He ran with the whole process and drew up our polyphagous shuttle border protocol, and we were one of the first municipalities that actually came up with a protocol and a decision tree of how to actually handle the shuttle border infestation with the amount of information that was available to us in South Africa. And for now, fingers and toes crossed, to our knowledge, the shuttle border is still contained to the Somerset West area and has not spread outside of the area within the City of Cape Town. Okay? And also just to commend Marco and his team while working on the house grow project. I don't know if Guy is still here. We are going to get the last couple of crows, Guy, but Marco for just all the hard work that he's done, he and his team, for the additional methods that he has deployed for the house crow to control house crows. They've been very clever, but Marco will tell you all about that. And then, like I mentioned, we've always overachieved on our targets, and hence we've managed to actually receive more and more funding over the years from our EPWP department. And lastly, just also, the work that we are doing, Stian and Lebo together, our collaboration with DAFFE to you've mentioned that the 100% success. Stian, you can really call Stian, WhatsApp Stian anytime. He responds immediately. I wish I could be like that and responds within 24 hours of receiving an email. But yeah, very appreciative of the relationship and obviously the path that we've walked thus far. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you very much.